It's moved by Member Smith, seconded by Member Witter. Matters arising from the minutes. Matters for discussion, presentation on the national infrastructure following Hurricane Melissa, Ministry of Economic Growth. But first, we will take Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, National Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Gordon or Madam Henry, whoever want to start.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So I won't be doing much today, rather than just to indicate that we were asked to present the activities of the National Solid Waste Management Authority post-Melissa, and that we would have prepared a report for the committee. A revised one was further issued this morning, which I trust you have received. And with that said, I'll hand over to Mr. Gordon, who has full remit of the matter.
Thank you, PS, Chairman. Oh, good. Thank you very much, Ms. PS. So, Chairman, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, as is our duty, set out within hours of Hurricane Melissa to assist with the clearance of, in the first instance, public main roads. And that's what an island-wide exercise, because while there are 5 parishes that are heavily affected and are well enumerated in terms of what damage they encountered, all across the island experience heavy winds, and therefore you have falling of trees, utility poles, etc. We went from within an hour of the hurricane we started. I remember the first clearance was on Constant Spring Road, and that was a huge tree that fell right in the vicinity of the bank, the National Commercial Bank. And that beginning was not just a temporary expedition, because as we speak, we are still working to clear debris. I'm just giving you this quick overview, and then I'll be happy to take questions. The Black River area, White House area, and one that you are most familiar with, Chairman, the Catherine Hall, West Green area. And I hope that I'm not getting into trouble by listing some of the areas, but those would have posed significant challenge for us. We were bogged down, for example, in the West Green area for over a month and a half. And, you know, it was quite an expensive expedition also, because in addition to clearing the communities, which was over 1,300 homes, we had to create temporary storage site for debris, as we needed a quicker turnaround time, and you know that our disposal facility in that area is way up in retirement. Now, if you factor in traffic plus other road issues from the hurricane, you would know that we would be still in Catherine Hall clearing if we were to do the thing there. So strategically, we were engaged the stadium, by the stadium, where we could store debris and then remove it after. Now, if you have to do one set of trucking and using heavy-duty equipment to move the debris from the community, to carry it somewhere for temporary storage, you incur cost to do that, but you also incur secondary cost now to move it from the storage, the temporary storage, to the official storage. We did that. We managed to clean the community up, and if there's some joy in all of that, is that we see people putting their lives back together in short order, trying, get back to living. Might not be as comfortable as before, but they get back to living. The NSWMA, we continue to work in and around the St. James space, and we didn't conclude our operation there by just focusing on the central part or the capital city, the city of Montego Bay. We extend to the rural St. James, to where we had a lot of road blockages and so on. Thousands of loads of debris were removed, as the report will tell you. And same for the other parishes. Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, significant amount of haulage, as is documented in the report. We did strategically, in a bid to minimize the debris that we have to move to our disposal site, we created several spots, one along Crane Road, we had in Black River itself, we have somewhere in White House, we have the area of St. Elizabeth called Font Hill, where we move our chippers, wood chippers around, station them at different locations that I've just outlined, and chip thousands of loads of wood, fallen trees, boards from people's homes. We instead of moving it to disposal site far away, we chipped it and reduced it to pretty much powder. Mr. Chairman, it is important for you and the team to know that we didn't get to move any of those chipped woods, because once we chip it, farmers take it up, trucks were coming and taking it, which is a good thing, because we wouldn't have enough storage at our disposal facility to pack everything in. But I'm told that it is good for farming and mulch, right, whatever, and for chicken, people who do farming, chicken farming and so on. So we found that was a good way to get a high percentage of the debris off us. We also engaged the scrap metal trade, and they were asked to do their own visits, look at where they would have seen things that are valuable to them, and they are doing that. We had a major challenge to pull down the Black River market, which we did in consultation with the parish council, and that was like a 1 week operation. A lot of steel, a lot of heavy metal, and so on. One of the major challenges, Chairman, was to clean up back the Independence Park. Everybody was happy for us to store there. But once you get a little distance away from the hurricane itself, everybody started cursing us out that we have to clean up the park. So we had to move the stuff from the park to, and that we have several hundred truckloads of things were there. The report will give you the details on that, and we had to move that to our Myersville disposal facility. The challenge we had, though, is the regular garbage was coming into our facility nonetheless. The hurricane didn't stop the generation of garbage in the community. So we found very quickly in the game that we are running out of space. So we had to cut additional space at the disposal facility to give us room to take in all those extra debris from Melissa. The government was very helpful and very decisive in that once they noticed that our truck capacity, and I'm talking dump trucks now, tipper, was challenged, they quickly allow us, through the emergency procurement, to buy 10 brand new tipper trucks. The Prime Minister came down to the office, handed over the trucks. We put those trucks to use, and they have not been parked since. As we speak, they are still out working. We were able to succeed in many ways with the help of private contractors where they are available, because as you know, there are a lot of other things going on. People doing their own repairs for the premises there. People are building, so that the amount of trucks available to us was not as in abundance as people think. But where they were available, we engaged hundreds of tipper trucks and heavy-duty equipment to help us along the way. What we are seeing now Chairman, is significant reduction. Significant. We are not claiming any victory or taking a victory lap, but we have seen significant reduction after we can account for 30,000, close to 40 loads of debris that were removed by the NSWMA. And again, to emphasize that the work continue. The first phase of the debris management saw us spending $500,000, 500 million. You see, I'm a small fry, you know, so I speak in thousands. Yes, but 500 million. And again, we have to give thanks to the government for the decisive approach they took to ensure that we were budgetarily supported for this exercise, because there's no way we could have even embarked on this enormous task without the government coming in and pumping in the resources necessary from a financial perspective. Once, by the time we get around to Christmas, you'll remember that Melissa was the back end of October, and by the time we get around to Christmas, we have exhausted the $500,000, and the government quickly pumped in for debris management another $1 million. One time? $1 billion. Please, thank you. One day I'll get there, Chairman, with the billions and the millions. So the government quickly pumped in another $1 billion for debris management, and that is what carried us to this point where we are now. We still have a lot to do, but we are here to report this morning that the phase 2 has now gone 21,306 loads of debris. 21,306 loads of debris. And when the mathematicians out there do their calculations, I have to remind them that the exercise is more than just the loads of debris. We do have people working in areas, especially in the deep rural pockets, where we have to provide refreshment. Because there was a time there when you couldn't get anything to buy. you couldn't, so we have to plan. Accommodation was also an issue. To send a team out into Westmoreland to work, and they come back in the evening and go back in the morning, it would be just logistically a nightmare. So we had to find place nearby, like in St. Elizabeth. We were able to find accommodation to put people up. And this was not just us. The JPS people had the white trucks all over with people taking up the spaces in the different Airbnbs and local hotel guest house facilities that they have. Well, so a lot of things went into this. Plus, you have heavy-duty equipment. There are a lot of things that we couldn't just handle by hand and so on. And then we had to treat with a huge labor cost, labor bill. So we did that deliberately, because it was important that the people who suffered so badly in these areas, that we find ways to incorporate them into our operation. So you will notice that we also did a labor-intensive fortnightly program with a collaboration with the SDC, where we took people on, machete men, worker men, chainsaw men, common laborer, to help clean up communities. And that went for 4 fortnights. And that was at a cost of over $214 million. The exact figure is on the thing, but just roughly $214 million. So in all, Chairman, what we are doing is pretty much trying to get people's life back to normal and proactively to look at the lessons that we can learn from Melissa. And as you will know, that in another couple of months, well, less than 2 months, the next season, the next hurricane season will start. So we, having learned some lessons from Melissa, can report this morning that with government resources, again, obviously, we have put in place the conditions that will not see us without water without electricity and without communication at any of our facilities island-wide. Again, we have now in process 4 brand new water trucks. The procurement has just concluded on those. So that each region will have a water truck. The water truck will help us in many ways because, you know, when there's a fire to a disposal facility, water is critical. So it won't be just there hiding within a hurricane season. It will have use right around the clock. We also acquire new generators for a couple of our offices. You know, we have 4 regional offices with their own independent bureaucracy that runs the operation in varying parish. Just quickly for your parish, Chairman, for your area, that's the WPM office, and that covers the parish of Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, and Trelawney. And because I see Mr. Witter here, I wouldn't want to leave him out. His parish is SPM, his area is SPM, and their office is in Mandeville, and that's St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and Clarendon. And of course, I wouldn't want Member Simit to believe that he's out of it either. He's in MPM, and that's where the capital city with the biggest region of Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, and St. Catherine. All 4 regions, there's NEPM, but I don't see any rep from NEPM here, which is St. Mary and Portland. All 4 regions will have enough generating capacity to run the region if the electricity goes, as it often does when we have these kind of events. They will have enough water so that they can keep their office going. And they will have Starlink. They have that already been installed. That will enhance the communication during that period. And why I make this point, Chairman, is because it took me a good 3 days to make contact with WPM after Melissa. And when I make contact, I had to drive from Kingston to go down there. And, Chairman, there was no water, there was no electricity, and there was no communication. And I said, how can we have an important government facility with such a vast number of commercial and, you know, I mean, so the interest, I mean, you have Montego Bay and Negril, you have the whole tourism belt, everything, and we can't make contact with the bureaucracy that treat with waste management. That's just not going to happen again. And that's one lesson that we have learned, and we have pretty much, long before the hurricane season, fixed that. So the NSWMA, we have not take our eyes off our core duty, which is to responsibly, in an environmentally sound manner, transport waste to safeguard the health of the population. And we believe that that duty, that core duty, is not confined to good times, which is why we have to put in place measures to ensure that it can be sustained and carried through even in the bad times, such as was delivered on us by Melissa. I couldn't come here, though, Chairman, and you will allow me, please, to acknowledge the staff in general, but especially the 320 of them who suffered badly out in those affected parishes. I'm talking about losing their homes. Yet they were back at work within a couple of weeks, not knowing where they're going home to sleep. There are a few of them still sleeping in a condition that is subhuman. Lost clothing, lost everything. But through our Brothers Keepers initiative at the office, the staff rallied, and we were able to pour in significant help from our meager resources to our brothers and sisters. And I commend them because there is one that you know well, Chairman, who manages our disposal site up at Retirement. He lost practically everything, including his car. But he was able to get clothing and was out working. When I saw him in Catherine Hall, I couldn't even recognize him because he looked so different, well bearded up and in some clothes that I don't know. But he was out working. So these reports, they are meaningless if we leave out the human resource. Because Stylistics in 1969, the song said, people make the world go round. So I do acknowledge them now and give them some credit.
Thank you very much. Members, you would have heard an extensive report on the happenings post-Melissa. Are there any questions at this time? I don't think you may have much. Member Witter?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend the NSWMA for their efforts in the post-Melissa recovery program. I remember going into Black River 2 days after the hurricane. But I couldn't get there. Could hardly get there. And when I get into the town and when I look, I must say that I was wondering if the debris in Black River could ever be cleared within less than a year, based upon the condition that I saw there. So I want to commend you for that. But I just want to, I know that you mentioned the issue of finding space at the disposal sites to accommodate these extra solid waste material. And that would have impacted your operations in terms of your normal, regular collection exercise. I want to find out now that you would have done so much. How much where are you now in terms of balancing back? I know there was an issue in terms of the resources being targeted for cleanup exercise and how it would have impacted your regular program. Where are we now in terms of balancing those works?
All right. So you're right, member, that we would have, our operation would have come under some strain, significant strain. The human resource that deal with the domestic garbage, the same energy have to be shared to deal with the massive debris management. What we did internally, at a point there when we assess the strain and see how best to deal with it, we formed internally a debris management committee where we look at personnel whose decks could have taken a little bit more load, and we put them together. We were planning, or at the time, our corporate service director, we get them to say, take charge of the day-to-day running of the debris management, so that the energies that were available to us for the regular operation would not be dissipated. So they went continue on that. And I can tell you that with that split in terms of the workload, we were able to pull back to the extent that we have the MPM region, which is our biggest region, is now somewhere in the region of 40 loads of backlog. But the overall figure that was given to me now by my Director of Operations, Ms. Aretha McFarlane, is that we have cut backlog by 60% since January, which means that the split worked in terms of, because, you know, if you just get up and have all these distractions on you, you didn't ask for it, but it just imposed on you. You know, that it must weaken you in some way, because we are not super people. We are humans. And once we did that internal maneuvering in terms of shifting some of the load elsewhere, then we begin to get back on top of the backlog situation. Not where we want to be yet. We would much rather come here and report 0 backlogs. But if you're coming from where we're coming from, a 60% decline is a massive decline based on where we're coming from. It was 80%. Right. So, so this is 60%, right? Oh, okay, sorry. Let me correct something, Chairman, through you. What we have is, we were 606 loads, and we have reduced it, and it's island-wide now, of backlog. And we have reduced it now to 123 loads, which is an 80% reduction. That's right? Yes. Good. So it's 80%. So to say, I'm sure the people who are encountering backlog now, that 123 load, they won't be cheering us on because obviously their place is messy. But, you know, we play the hand that we draw, and by any measurement, this is a significant reduction coming from where we were. But again, there's context that has to be applied. Right leading up to Melissa, we had to take 2 or 3 days off regular collection to focus on some pre-Melissa cleanup. Now, pre-Melissa cleanup, or it could be pre-any hurricane cleanup. We go to the hot spots that are prone to flooding. We try to clear out the garbage out of those areas. There are some critical spaces that we know them historically, that as the rain begin to drizzle, you have the flooding. So we proactively clean those. Once Melissa was zeroing on us, we take time out and clean those. We also try to get rid of the many dumps that were up, because, you know, there's a cultural defect that we continue to battle. Jamaica is one of the few countries that people toss things through the windows of car at will. People have a whole mattress and go and put it on the sidewalk. We have a big program lined up this year for public education to begin to curb that culture. We cannot continue like this. So once a hurricane is approaching, those become our main focus, because we don't, you know, when the rain comes and the wind, those things begin to float, those loose garbage float in the waterway and create more problems. And that's what leads to the flooding and the loss of lives and the damage to properties and so on. So we had to take that break. That caused our domestic collection to suffer a bit. But then right after Melissa again, we couldn't go anywhere. They were everywhere blocked up. So we had to go out and clear. So there is about a 6-day window where we had very little focus on domestic collection. How do you explain that to the person in the 123? You just can't explain it. But again, you play the hand that you draw. We are coming. We are coming. We're moving from 606, we're down to 123, and we are not comfortable. We're going to get rid of it.
You spoke about the public education program, and I've seen that because I've gotten a few invitations in my area to attend some of these public education exercises. Are you able to explain to those persons within that 123 loads a timeline that you'll be able to reach out to them?
Yes. Thank you very much for the question. So one of the things that our public education team is tasked to do is to have numbers. You can't have numbers for everybody, obviously, it wouldn't make much sense. But to have leadership. In every community you go in, you have a popular shopkeeper, a justice of peace, you have people who have some citizens association president, a good pastor. You know, we want to get all those numbers, and they're gathering them. So what happened is, if we are going to be missing, for example, Witter District, we have enough people in Witter District that we can send a message to, whether by WhatsApp or a personal call, to say, look, we're behind. Give us a couple of days. These are the reasons why we're behind. So we are doing those personal reaching out, and it is with good effect. With good effect, because we have seen where people will call radio station, people will still post on Facebook, and whatever social media. But we are seeing far less of that, and even when they do, they will say them talk to somebody at the office and they say the truck will come. But they don't see truck yet and stuff like that. So we are doing that reaching out, and we have to do more of that. But more, we must get a change in the culture overall, because 67 to nearly 70% of the garbage that we currently load on a truck, where taxpayers have to purchase the fuel, purchase the truck tire, pay the driver, pay for wear and tear, 67% of that garbage could be composted. So were we to get a composting culture out, especially out in rural Jamaica, we're having problem in the Strait of Hormuz now. Far be it from me to dabble in rural politics, but a lot of fertilizer come through that strait. If we were utilizing the composting training that we are giving, and we've been in community doing composting, and there are, big examples that we can make of composting, where successes are. But we'd be needing less imported fertilizer if we were doing composting. But more, we'll be getting better yields. Some of the nicest pumpkin that I've eaten come from a community where we're doing the composting. And the crops are healthier. So if we could, even on that one alone, see some success, member, we would have, it would have been a major game changer. But what would happen is, we would need less trucks to take garbage, because 67% of your waste would be converted at source to help build you the better crops, the lovelier flower plant, and everything like that. And we would need less acreage for disposal facility, because we would have far less take in there. So it's a win-win around the place. And we're not just going to focus on composting alone. We have been doing work with composting. But this massive public education program, I must say that when the Prime Minister visited to hand over the 10 trucks, as part of his duty to the NSWMA, he came to our boardroom and met with the staff. And he challenged us to change the culture. And he's prepared to encourage his team to fund that robust and sustained public education program. Because anywhere in the world you go, cultures never change overnight. You have to chip away at it. It is a whole slew of menu things that you have to put together. One is the public education. You have to also have your efficient enforcement thing in place.
What about incentive?
That's a word that they use a lot. But I'd be personally embarrassed to say I have to literally be incentivizing people to be clean. For me, I hope we don't have to get so. I think we are very far away from the center in terms of the way we manage the waste space. But if we ever get to a place where we have to say to you, boy, if for you to tidy up your yard, have to do a little inducement. I think that would be embarrassing for the country. But what
I'm not looking in terms of your normal cleaning up of your space, but in terms of adaptation in relation to composting and so on.
Well, what we do as our incentive in that regard is to come in and teach you. We have struck up a partner with the SDC and RADA in the last community where we did in Hanover, and we will step that up. We will, expand on that and to go into communities. And I'm saying it here, I've said it elsewhere. We are open to come in, and we are not even waiting until you invite us. We are suggesting that we are suggesting to you that we will come and we will sit with your farm group, we will sit with the youth club, we will bring the expertise, we'll teach them how to do it, and we will follow up with them to make sure that it is being done properly, because we believe that this would be a big game changer.
Right. Well, that will be part of the incentivize. And
Appreciate.
Yeah, by giving the.
Any other question? Member Simit?
Yeah, man. Thank you, Chairman. Morning. Thank you, Mr. Gordon, for you and your team. Very good presentation. It's not the first time I've heard you make a presentation, and you continue to do well. I read the report this morning. I just saw it this morning. And I, too, want to congratulate the National Solid Waste Management Authority. And you'd see on my notes here, I highlighted the section about the staff members themselves were severely affected. And I'm happy that you highlighted that, because sometimes we Jamaicans at home, reading the press, listening to the news, and we get very upset with the state of the garbage and the state of the cleanup after Melissa, and not understanding that what Jamaica experienced, most countries across the world has never experienced that, the devastation from Melissa. So thank you for you and your team, and congratulations. However, I have a few questions. Some of them you touched on already. You mentioned and I'm just going to give all of them to you, and you just answer them, right? You mentioned some temporary storage spaces that you use, especially like the stadium over in St. James or over the west. I want to know if that area is now cleared and back to normal. You mentioned phase 1 of 500 million, a phase 2 of 1 billion. Are there plans for phase 3 for 1.5 billion? I just want to know if that is the case. You also said that you have become very proactive, that none of your regions, if another storm is to come, none of your regions will lose communications because you have put things in place, Starlink and generators, etc. What a challenge I'm having closer to home now, let's talk about Northwest St. Andrew. Every time we have heavy rains, there's a backup of garbage, and we're told it's mainly because the Riverton site is saturated. So trucks go on the dump, they get stuck, and they, of course, can't enter and leave. So there's a pile up of garbage across the constituency. I want to know what's the future plans for this Riverton site, because it can't be a case when rain falls for 2 or 3 weeks, people's garbage is backed up for 4 or 5 weeks because the trucks just can't get onto the landfill. So I want to know if that's a part of your future plans. Also, I'm happy to hear that you're going to take on a public education campaign. It is very important, vitally important, because I am seeing where persons across the city, my constituency included, that they throw bulky waste on the road or out in the gullies or wherever at any time and say that, you know, I know there are some programs that the National Solid Waste Management Authority has about bulky waste removal. I would really appreciate if more persons could learn about it, how they could be a part of it, what days you do it, if it could be promoted more. Because when I visit different citizen association meetings, they are saying that, you know, the truckman will come and he has to be incentivized to pick up something, which is not the case. That's not supposed to happen. So I would love for you to, in your public education campaign, is to highlight the do's and the don'ts of bulky waste disposal and removal. And also, you mentioned it a while ago, composting. That is a low-hanging fruit, as you mentioned, and I would really appreciate if that could be a lot more public education on that. Now, the biggest problem I think you may have, and I've been hearing you speak about it for many years, is the culture. On my way down here this morning, I just saw a driving man in a car, person winding on the window, threw a patty bag and a box drink right on West Kings House Road. You know, doing drain cleaner or mitigation, we're cutting the bush on Perkins Boulevard then, for example. If you see Oliver Road, when you do the cutting, if you see the amount of box drinks, box juice, I mean, that is in itself a national disgrace. So I'm just asking and beseeching that your public education campaign could start quite soon and these things could be included in it.
Thank you very much, Member Smith. Temporary storage sites were exactly as they are characterized, temporary, and we have removed the Catherine Hall, all the debris from Catherine Hall already to our facility in retirement. We also remove all the debris from Independence Park in Black River to our disposal facility. We still have debris in George's Plain in Westmoreland, and we are currently converting that into a more long-term temporary holding area, because when we move garbage from, say, Negril or Sav to carry it 50 miles to retirement, you can imagine the gas usage, you can imagine the turnaround time with the traffic issues, everything is not cost effective. So there's always planned to have a temporary facility long before Melissa in Westmoreland. And so we are currently now fencing that property, and we're going to put a little container office there. We're going to think, so we'll store the garbage there and move it by night, might be 2 times a week by night, with big trailers, with big containers and so on. And that would be a game changer for that part of the island, because a lot of our resources is tied up in traffic, navigating Lucy, navigating the Mount wherever there is, and so on. So that would be a game changer, and we're doing that. But yes, the temporary storage facility arrangements are temporary, and we have begun clearing them, and we have cleared 2 prominent ones so far. Phase 1, phase 2, will there be a phase 3? Absolutely, there have to be a phase 3, because as we speak, people have begun rebuilding. And in the rebuilding, they are seeing things that they don't need now, that before we couldn't touch it because it's people's private place. And they are putting it out, yes, you guess right, on the road, because they hear that the government is doing the debris management. So there have to be a phase 3. We have already begun discussion with the government with regards to that phase 3, and we don't have any doubt that the government will, as they have done in the past, give us the support for that. The saturation of the Riverton disposal facility you spoke about is not unique. All our roads in our disposal sites across the country are dirt tracks. Somebody said, why you don't put concrete road? Because garbage collection, and a lot of members of the public don't really fully understand that we have to do it by cell. So you're disposing here today, you might be there for another 2 months, but then you move to somewhere else. Now it's kind of very difficult to, it's not like you're making one main road. You have to keep moving around. So currently what we have is dirt tracks, and once it rains heavily, it becomes saturated and it slows the operation down significantly, and you have instances where a truck gets stuck and we have to use the heavy duty equipment that we have on the site to move the trucks out and so on. It does have an effect on our garbage collection operation. With regards to the Riverton in particular, that's the one you were talking about, there is a closure plan for Riverton, and you'll know that the cabinet had appointed an enterprise team, and they have done their closure plan on that already. Where it go next is not mine to say, but there is a major plan that is in place to have a relocation of the Riverton City Disposal Facility. So sufficient until that time, we have to keep navigating the terrain that we currently have. Like you, we are anxious to hear the next step. The bulky waste, I'm going to ask your chairman to give me a minute to talk about bulky waste in other countries. Because Jamaica don't operate in a vacuum, and some of the things we do in Jamaica are not exactly aligned with best practices. And part of what the public education program will have to be doing is to educate people that you are responsible for the solid waste that you generate, and to communicate with them through that same medium the best practices that's obtained elsewhere. A proper disposal facility ought rightly to have 2 gates. 1 exit, 1 entrance, with scale when you're going in and when you're coming out. So if in another jurisdiction somebody have some old stove, whatever, they have done some reconstruction and their house refurbishing, it is their duty to ensure that that is disposed of in a responsible, environmentally sound manner. And so they would carry it down, it's weighed, and they pay to have it done. Our arrangement is like we have gone in a direction which is unsustainable to do all the collection from the property taxes. Now, what the property tax yield cannot sustain the way we do waste in Jamaica. So there are some harsh realities that we will have to contend with. And one of them is that we will have to communicate to people their own obligation that they have. Nobody should cut down a big tree and store it on the sidewalk. If you think about it, it's really unsustainable. Nobody should have old stove, old mattress and just get and put it on the sidewalk. People have to be walking in the road. because I put on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of things to be done, not just at my level, but elsewhere, maybe up the higher level where you operate from, member, to look.
Just to stop you, Sir Gordon. Enforcement is part and parcel of your mandate. And if you're not enforcing the situation, then you're going to find everybody thinking that is the norm. For example, in the West, people building, they will do debris removal. It is placed on the sidewalk. It is for solid waste now to use heavy equipment and dumper trucks to remove a truckload of debris that a man lit down his house. It can't be. And so we ask of you to pay more attention because the law is already there now. Use it, because I may see somebody being fined for a situation, and right away I tell myself, I don't want to pay that money. So I will make sure that when I'm doing the same thing, that I will do it to the extreme, wherein I will take it directly to the place that it ought to be. And so we have to. You have garages that they take in the vehicles, they do what they have to do with it, and the remnant of the vehicle is placed on the sidewalk.
Right.
Clear view, everybody knows who did it, but yet him get away with it, so the man down the road thinks that he can do just the same thing. And so I want us to pay more attention to enforcement. Enforcing the law so that people understand that it's not just every time you speak to somebody. Because we, as member of parliament, we have the situation wherein people saying to you, but we're paying with taxes. And so it gives them the right to break the law. It shouldn't be. You must be responsible for whatever that you do. And so I will say to you this morning that as an entity who has, under the law, you're one of the only or the few that has an arm within your act that gives you the right to prosecute.
Right. So, Chairman, thank you very much for that. Just to inform the committee that we are very big on enforcement and what enforcement can do in our current situation. That's the reason why we impress on the Ministry of Finance for some enforcement posts, because the committee should know that up to recently, we only had an enforcement director position on our establishment. All of them were unattached workers. They weren't a part of the government establishment. We have now 150 established posts for enforcement. And as we speak, we are recalibrating the enforcement effort inside to recruit higher caliber. And I say that knowing fully well that when they hear me say higher caliber back at the office, they'll be upset. But I repeat, we want higher caliber. We can now pay them based on the established salary that is there. Before we couldn't. So what we are doing now is upping the ante. We are upgrading our enforcement unit. And maybe you're reading the minister's mind. I have a meeting with the minister. He want to urge him in to discuss fines, because that's the other thing. You have the enforcement, but you need the kind of fines that will hurt people. We have been writing tickets over 500 per month. So we are out there and we are doing work. But our fines are not creating the deterrent effect that we would like. So yes, you're correct, Chairman. I'm with you 100%. But I'm also a little bit ahead of you in that I'm doing a number of things already. One of them was to get the posts and the upgraded salary for the enforcement unit. Mr. Smith, you had said that the bulky waste removal give the sanitation workers an opportunity, the way it is being done currently, to tax people further.
I said that when, sorry, Chairman. What I said is that how the system, how it's operating now based on what I'm being told when I go to community meetings. They're saying, MP, you know, I throw out my things them, and the truck man say, well, if me give him a thing.
Same thing, sir.
Okay.
Same thing.
Right. And
Now,
I'm saying, no, that ought not to happen, but there need to be but I know the entity have bulky waste removal days,
Right.
and there's a policy in place. I just
Right.
want more people to be aware of it.
Right. So we need to communicate. I be first to concede that we have to do better communication around everything that we do, including the bulky waste arrangement, because bulky waste arrangement is a quarterly thing that we usually announce, and we usually have our community relations do the requisite reaching out. But you know how it goes. If you announce something, whatever medium you use, a whole heap of people never hear. And especially if they want an excuse that they didn't hear, because you have that too. And I really want to address, though, frontally, because not you have that concern, it is widespread across Jamaica, where my workers are seeing an opportunity to tax people. The people already pay the property tax for the service that we currently provide. And the public should know, under no circumstances should they be fleeced of anything, any resource, no financial resource for the duty that the sanitation worker is out there to provide. They are not under any compulsion. As a matter of fact, I put it another way, they should not give them anything. They are paid, and their salary has also improved with the new reclassification exercise. All of them were sanitation or unattached workers. They are now permanent employees. They are attached to the government establishment. They have a better, far better salary. We are seeing some people are applying now to work on the truck that if 10 years ago, I wouldn't expect to see those people asking me they want to work on the truck. We are not saying the salaries are the best, or we are compared to other jurisdictions. But it's a disgrace for so much effort to be made, not just to establish you as a permanent worker, but to increase your salary, and you still go there begging people. And benefits, health insurance, life insurance, right? Pension, all those things. And you go there to beg people. I am very incensed by it, and I would ask people, to the extent you can, without compromising your security, to snap a little pic of the truck, a plate number, if you can, and so I can know the crew that was out there, that we can take action against it. This is not how we operate. That's not our modus operandi. We are the attire people. We believe in accountability, transparency, integrity. They are trained. We pull them in once a year for back to basic training. The two people responsible for it are right here for the back to basic training. I appear of all of them and talk to them. We talk to them about customer service, hygiene, money management, family values, a lot of stuff that we think we bring outside speaker to think there. We bring, as a former lecturer, Rex Neckleford say, the modernization of the people. We make them come into a nice air-conditioned space, have meals with them, talk to them, encourage them, and they go there begging and bringing the authority into disrepute. We are not for it, and it should not happen. I'm hearing that the salary is never late. You see.
Thank you for the clarity, Mr. Gordon. I can confirm,
Just to let you know, last two questions.
Yes, man,
Can
and
we
I'm
still...
done. Yeah, man. I can confirm about enforcement, because I was having an issue with illegal... I'm sorry. I can confirm about the enforcement at the National Solid Waste Management Authority, because I was having an issue with illegal dumping on Perkins Estate. And that person was caught, a photograph was taken, he was submitted to the normal challenges, and that person came back, cleaned it up. I think they paid a fine.
Yeah.
You also mentioned 500 tickets a month approximately that you're giving out. If Frank Witter got a ticket for illegal dumping and he doesn't pay it, what is the repercussion for that? And I want to know what's the type of money for these tickets. And you mentioned the fines. You want to meet with the Honorable Minister about probably looking at the fines. What are the fines currently for the illegal dumping, and what are the fines for the tickets that approximately 500 that you give out every month?
Yes. So fines vary. Fines do vary. Depend on, I think the issue at Perkins Boulevard, if I go from memory, I think the person was charged somewhere in the region of 500,000. We do get those, usually when we have them, the evidence is so clear, we usually have cooperation there in terms of the payment. And as you said, that they even clean the space up. But there is, to answer to your question about what happens if they refuse, there is the courts that we can always go to, and there can be imprisonment. But in terms of giving you the list of the fines, I wouldn't have that here on me, but that can be furnished.
Member Witter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you said this is the last
Question.
question. Mr. Gordon, the rural area, I'm a countryman, as you know. I have seen where a number of the rural shops, small shops and so on, and even some of the bigger ones in some of the small towns, utilize the regular garbage skip that are placed right across the rural area. And they use it to dispose their commercial garbage. I know that there should be some arrangement with commercial entities for them to pay a fee, I think, and for their collection. How is that enforcement going in rural areas, rural small shops right across?
We do have a commercial department where we make arrangements with people who own businesses, and the contracts are usually done up between them and our commercial people through our legal department. And that has worked well in many areas, rural and urban areas. Is it that we have captured everyone? I don't think so. And it's a work in progress. We continue to go out with lists in areas where I've been personally on a couple of those lists where we go in, talk to businesses, encourage them to sign up and have their garbage properly removed. But remember, there are always people who try to, piggyback and, something that they see happening where they can escape payment. For example, you have a large supermarket over here, you have your skip out there, the little shop down the road, send a little man, sometimes even a madman, to just carry the garbage that they have come put in your skip. So what you find happening is that those are our reality, that we do try to catch everyone, but we have not, and we continue to work to see how we can bring everyone into the net.
Right, so I'll just advise that you look into the rural areas, because it has become a problem where, as you said, somebody will just give a man the thing and say, "I'll drop you over this, I'll drop you over this." Right. And that is happening, for sure.
And I must say, without getting into any diplomatic issues with any country, that there are some people who are taking over all our commercial space now, and they are not cooperating fully. Right. I think you know what I'm talking. But we have developed this understanding with the mayors that what we will do is go jointly, and I've done so with the Kingston Mayor already, into those businesses to try to get them to understand their civic obligation. We even have a meeting pending where we're trying to meet with one of the local diplomats from diplomatic representative. But it is a problem, and it's not, I don't want the impression to be given that it's just the little lady down the corner with a little shop or the man selling a little coconut up here. We are having problem with major businesses in a lot of the town centers with a particular group of people.
Member Smith, and it is the last question.
Final question, Mr. Gordon. You mentioned that there was a extended temporary facility in Westmoreland, and you put a container down there, and now
Not yet. We're going to be putting
right, and then you're going to transport it by night back to Montego Bay.
Yeah, to retirement, right?
Retirement. Why not just set up a landfill in Westmoreland?
No.
The lease arrangement that was we have for that place is not for a landfill. It was supposed to be a transfer station. Now, I inherit that. When I came there, it's not, it's not really a good comment to be making because this thing predates me. We are only now moving on it for a number of reasons. However, I don't really think we need to be adding more disposal facility. We should be having less disposal facility, those large ones, and go more towards the transfer station type of thing, where we, do the separation. Remember now, everything is into this big context of how we manage waste. Were we to get the composting going, remember, we don't call anything waste anymore, We're into a word called circularity now, where everything has value. So if we were to get the composting going, consider what that would have done as a country to your import bill in terms of fertilizer. That's one big one. Then there's the other percentage. You have the recyclables like the old metal and the plastic going in another direction. I guess by now you'll begin to realize that you don't need these big acreage for anything because everything has used. The truth is we have this concept of waste which is flawed, and part of what our public education program will be doing is to change that, because we no longer think waste, we think opportunity. You'll be amazed at the amount of monies our pickers are making on the disposal side to pick the bottles, pick the cardboards, etc. As a matter of fact, one of the safest job going forward will be the job of a picker. Because as we get more into this circularity concept, we will see use, we'll find use in even the things that we formerly just toss out at will and call it waste. So that's a new paradigm which we will begin to usher in slowly but surely through our public education arrangements.
Let me thank you very much, Madam PS and ED Gordon. You have enlightened us thus far. We now have information that we didn't have. So is John Public out there. And so once again, we thank you for being here with us this morning to give us this information. You may excuse yourself if you so do. At this time, we will now move to Madam P.S. Williams and your team.
Chair, thank you very much, and members. I'm very sad to see my PS counterpart going because we could use her help in some of the areas. Nevertheless, Chair, we got some queries from the committee, and I suspect from you yourself, as well as what members could possibly be asking. And so our presentation today will be crafted around these questions. It doesn't mean that the members are not open to asking other questions, but we are very grateful that we are here and we take our responsibility as civil servants and public servants very, very seriously in terms of educating members as to what we are doing in the Ministry of Economic Growth and the Infrastructure Development, and indeed its agency, the main one today will be the National Land Agency. And as well, we know that the members of the public, some of them do watch these proceedings. And so our presentation will focus around the National Spatial Plan. It will also touch on applicable land policy that we are using, land for social housing program, the land settlement, the systematic land registration, as well as identification of lands owned by the government of Jamaica that may be suitable for emergency use as land settlements by affected residents. I know that the request was prompted largely by the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Nevertheless, I just want to contextualize the presentation to say that the work in the ministry and its entities would have commenced and have been ongoing way before the passage of the hurricane. And so, without much more ado, Madam Walcott, I turn over to you to commence the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Piers. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Now, land management for us is governed by several key pieces of legislation and government policy. Chief among them are the Land Divestment Policy, the National Land Policy, the National Housing Policy and Implementation Plan, the Draft National Squatter Management Policy, the Housing Act, the Crown Property Vesting Act, the Local Improvements, Communities Amenities Act, and the Registration of Titles Act, to name a few. These are our key legislation, but it's not an exhaustive list. Now, I'll be dealing with some of the activities that NLA has undertaken. Our systematic land registration is one of our flagship services. It came about through legislative amendments in 2020, and we started the program in 2021. Through the NLA and the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development, we have made significant strides in formalizing land ownership through this program, which is a comprehensive and orderly parcel-by-parcel registration of land in a set geographical area. So we define a project area for the systematic registration, and the NLA and our partners go in the communities and we adjudicate on land rights and boundaries. Now, we've had significant milestones since we started, and as at March 2026, systematic registration has yielded over 13,000 titles, and our ad hoc program has yielded over 7,000. So we have a total of over 20,000, almost 21,000 titles issued in that time period. Systematic land registration has been a very successful program for us, and it really does show that this is the methodology that will yield the greatest results for land titling. Now, another significant part or mandate for the Commission of Lands is the Land Settlement Program. This is a government-structured program initiative that was aimed at transforming state land ownership and distributing the larger tracts of land into smaller agricultural holdings to allow farmers to be able to farm and build their residential house. Now, through several schemes over the years, the Land Settlement Program has tried to ensure that equitable distribution of land is given to all our allottees. So we've had the land settlement schemes in Jamaica as far back as the 1920s. We've had Operation Pride and the 1950s and 70s initiative. Overall, the National Land Agency has over 300 land settlements across the island, comprising about over 62,000 individual lots in these land settlements. And thus far, we have been able to get 45,000 titles issued or in the land settlements. Now, key aspects of this program is the purpose is to empower the poor. We are distributing our larger tracts of land into smaller holdings for agricultural use. We do that through a notice of allotment that allows the individual to go on the property and take possession to start farming and living on the property while they pay the government over a specific time. And once we settle on that price, this is interest-free, and they pay over 15 to 25 years is our standard time, and they're given certain conditions that they pay annually or semi-annually. Now, the government provides infrastructure, and of course, at the end of the payment program, we provide the title for the individual lots to our allottees. And of course, unfortunately, when there are any breaches to the agreement, we must exercise enforcement if they have breached the conditions of the land settlement. Now, if you go to page 15. Yeah. Yes. So you'll see a breakdown per parish of the land settlement and the lots that we have. And overall, for the entire country, we have 62,690. And this is across over 379 land settlements across the island. Now I'll turn over to my colleague to deal with the new social housing program.
Morning, committee members. I'm Richard Cargill. This program is targeted at the elderly, disabled, low-income families, those in disaster-prone areas, and victims of
Speaking to the mic.
Domestic abuse. There are various modalities, for example, building homes, replacing substandard structures like wattle and daub with durable housing, relocation of vulnerable communities. Under this component, small communities that are not yet established or located in environmentally sensitive areas like no-build zones and other areas deemed unsuitable for residential development will be relocated. The third modality is the upgrading of tenement yards, or what we call big yards. This modality will see the upgrading of the physical infrastructure in tenement and similar communities. Also, where necessary, steps will be taken to regularize the tenancy of the residents. So far, the new social housing program continues to provide security, dignity, and a chance for vulnerable Jamaicans to own home. Over 320 housing units or 735 rooms across 57 constituencies have been completed. This has resulted in approximately 1,170 individuals benefiting from the program. I will now hand over to Ms. McLaren.
Morning, Chairman and committee members. So we're speaking now on spatial planning tools. The last physical plan, which is referred to as a spatial plan, was done in the 1970s and covered a period of 20 years. Currently, we're actively working to prepare a new one, and so far we've prepared 7 thematic papers which cover the following areas: social amenities, public utilities and infrastructure, human and industrial settlements, the environment, land resources, coastal resources, and marine resources. Spatial planning is guided by several legislation and tools. To date, we have the Town and Country Planning Act, the Local Improvement Act, the Parish Development Orders, and local sustainable development plans. What are some of the things we're currently working on? The NSPIT, or the National Spatial Plan Information Technology Platform, that has been completed, and it will be used to digitally operate the spatial plan once it is completed. We're also working on a developer's guide, or as some persons would probably be more familiar with it, called a developer's manual, an open space and green infrastructure planning guideline, and a tree ordinance.
All right, thank you. All right, members, I'm going to take us through our Hurricane Melissa resettlement program. At the ministry, we were asked to look at identifying lands that could be used for the resettlement and the hurricane relief. Now, the NLA with our ministry, we have identified approximately 1,000 acres of land across the parishes of Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Hanover, Westmoreland, and Trelawney and St. James that could be considered for the resettlement of citizens who are severely impacted by Hurricane Melissa. Now, further consultations with our relevant stakeholders will be done to finalize these lands, including NEPA, Mines and Geology, and our various ministries and the municipalities in each of these parishes to ensure that we finalize the lands that will be used. Now, going through, yes. So that gives a breakdown of the 6 parishes affected, and per parish in Manchester, we've identified approximately 390 acres, in St. Elizabeth, approximately 310 acres, in Trelawney, 50 acres, Hanover, 67.5 acres, Westmoreland, 137 acres, and in St. James, 330 acres. And these lands represent the Commission of Lands and the Ministry of Housing's properties. These are lands that will be in the pool as we finalize the lands that will be used for the resettlement.
Good morning again, Chair and committee members. So the National Spatial Data Management Branch within the ministry, we're now going to be responsible for helping and supporting the unified collation of data for this purpose. So we'll ensure that all the spatial inputs from our different partners, internal to the ministry and also external stakeholders such as the NLA, the ODPEM, all our stakeholders, including local government and MLSS, are collated in one central space to allow the identification of the requisite lands that are required to support the different relocation exercises and resettlement exercises that the ministry will lead. So the outcome is essentially one collated platform that is accessed by all our stakeholders to support any sort of transparent and evidence-based resettlement and recovery planning across the government. Thank you.
And Chair and members, when we're looking at the budget that was provided this year, we haven't put out everything, but what I want to highlight is that for the electronic land titling project, which is a capital project, we have about 1.7 billion approximately allocated to that, so persons can be aware of the intent of the government to seriously look at this matter and to ensure that we have titles in the hands of persons. So we, as I had said before, we do take our work very, very seriously. And even that this is the end of the presentation, we also would have wanted to highlight the National Spatial Data Management Branch, and that's the budget that is there allocated to them. And I always say when I get to these fora that these are initial allocations. The government, as it has done over the past, can allocate more funds. You know, so this is not an exhaustive kind of thing. We're just giving an indication as to how much has been allocated to the activities that we're discussing this morning. So thank you, members. Chair, we are open to questions.
Member Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do have a lot of questions this time, Chairman. I do have a lot of questions with this team. Good. Thank you, Mrs. Williams and your team. You mentioned a while ago that you and your team take your work seriously, and I agree, because, for example, the communities of Akiwalk and Jacksontown in my constituency of Northwest St. Andrew, I'm the third member of parliament that have been trying to get titles for the residents in those communities. It started under former member of parliament Derek Smith many years ago. It was followed up again by my predecessor, Dr. Nigeria Clark, who did a lot of work, and now I'll have the benefit of handing over those titles to the Honorable Prime Minister, hopefully very soon. I want to know, when is that going to happen? I asked the Minister Montague in our Standing Finance Committee, and he said it was soon. And so that's the first question. My other question is for Ms. Walcott, that mentioned that when there's a breach, you do enforcement. I want an example of the type of breach that you have experienced before and the sort of enforcement that is meted out. And then another question now is for, I don't remember your name, but you came very late. Social housing. You mentioned 53 constituencies. That's what you said, right? 57, sorry. And I can guarantee that the 3 that are not involved is Northwest St. Andrew. 6, sorry, not involved, is Northwest St. Andrew. There's no social house in Northwest St. Andrew, and I'm not sure why, but I'm relatively new. No. There's a lot of need in the constituency. We have quite a few big yards in the constituency. We have a need, and I want you to help me as a new young member of parliament. I want you to guide me of how I can benefit, because from time to time, I see the Honorable Prime Minister all over the island, you know, sometimes late at night, cutting ribbons to these beautiful homes, the before and the after. And I'm anxious to be a part of that, because there's a need in my constituency. Also, I have 2 areas that I want you to look at in the constituency that could really do some help with. I can't go into detail here, but I'd love to contact and see how we can work, because I have some prime property that is that can accommodate some of the social housing. Finally, to you, I'm going back to the Honorable Prime Minister. I see where he broke ground, not broke ground, but handed over this beautiful, almost like a housing complex, you know, upstairs, downstairs. I mean, indeed, he's the Prime Minister. But I'm saying that there are some areas in Northwest St. Andrew that can accommodate facilities like that. There's a need for facilities like that, but there's a problem with the land. Who owns the land? And I'm so happy that this team is here this morning to assist me with that. So let us find out first who owns the land, and let's see how we can move forward to get some of these lovely social homes that this government is handing over month after month, it appears.
So, member, in response to your question about Akiwalk and Jackson town, The process is very, very far advanced. The titles are now being dealt with at the NLA, and we're just basically coordinating now to arrange a date with the persons who are to receive those titles. And so, in very short order, that ceremony will be held. Before I turn over to Madam Walcott to ask the question you...
A quick follow-up. Madam Pierce, that's excellent news. Best news I've heard all year. Madam Pierce, no, those communities, you see, I know you're just finalizing a date, but we have to... Yeah, follow-up question. You're finalizing a date, but you have to have a place to hand over.
Follow-up question.
A coming chairman, you just, coming to the question. You know what, Madam, I'll speak to you after here on this matter.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Usually, remember, it is a very collaborative process. So we engage the MPs. And in that vein, in terms of the question that you have posed to Mr. Cargill, and I'll turn over to him to answer the more specific things. But generally speaking, how the program, the new social housing program is implemented, is that we do have significant input from the Member of Parliament. It is constituency driven. So in terms of what you have said about your own constituency, we would look forward to having those discussions with you. Mr. Cargill, I'll turn over to you now.
All right, member, we got...
Speak in the mic.
Member, we got a recommendation from Dr. Clark some years ago to look at a property for multifamily, a tenement upgrade. I think it's, what do you call it, top of Mullines Road. But the property was too small for the recommended beneficiaries. We went and looked at another property, but we didn't get any recommendation letter or follow-up from the Member of Parliament regarding that. So if you have any communities for tenement upgrade, you can send a recommendation to the Prime Minister and copy it to the Permanent Secretary, and we'll move on it right away. As well as other single units or beneficiaries that you would like to benefit from the program. It starts with a recommendation letter, and then we take it from there.
So, as for us in St. James, I know that we would have had quite an amount of discussion over the years. Can you enlighten us as to where we are at this time, especially for the Canterbury/Albion upgrade? Also, Rose Heights is one of the largest informal settlements. We have done in piecemeal titles before. As it is, we would have started a program some time ago, but we had to stop the program because of the boundaries. You have boundary pegs falling in the middle of somebody's home. And so we had come up with an idea of having a what you call as-is survey. Can we get some information on that, Madam Pierce, if you're aware of it, please?
Sorry, Chairman, you're talking about title or social housing recommendation?
Question. The one first is the social housing, Canterbury/Albion, and then for the titling of Rose Heights.
All right, regarding the Canterbury/Albion, that would be a project that...
Mike.
That would be a project that was recommended to the ministry before new social housing program. When the program started, we are still in this dialogue with you, Member of Parliament, Chairman, sorry, to finalize the beneficiaries that you will be proposing. And then we'll be going into the design phase. So you are to finalize the beneficiaries for the development.
So you're saying I need to get in touch with you. All right, will do. Madam P.S.
So, Chair, I've taken note of your question, the titles for Rose Heights. This is something that I will do some more research on and then get back in touch with you.
Chairman,
Before you member, just one last question from myself. I noticed on the document here that you have a number of around 25 settlements in and around St. James. Give us an update as to where you are as it relates, because all these settlements need titling.
Member, I do not have those specifics for St. James. We just did the collation of the general facts on that. But every year we do work to get in titles for the land settlements to close off.
So what I will ask of you, Madam Walcott, is that if you could give us an update through a letter to Parliament, to me, to tell me exactly where you are with those settlements in St. James and what is needed, if anything is needed. Yes. Thanks. Member Smith? Sorry.
Yes, one more question before you answer me, Ms. Walker. Now, one more statement to Mrs. Williams, my good friend. Mrs. Williams, I hear you that this social housing initiative is MP driven. So any member of parliament or any constituency that is without the member of parliament must be partially blamed. But I have been a member of parliament since November 24. And if I never came to this meeting this morning, I'd be unaware of the process, which is partially my fault. And I would encourage you, Madam PS, if you could, if your office could, you know, newer members of parliament, or not even so new, because even chairman here didn't know that what he's waiting for, the system has changed. So if we could communicate better with the members of parliament as to what obtains and the processes for them to tap into the resources available to them, it would be a great help, Madam PS.
To answer your question regarding the enforcement, there are three main issues that come up for us to deal with enforcement. One is non-payment of the rental, two, non-utilization of the property, and the third one, using the property in a manner contrary to what it was allotted for. So for non-payment of rental, there are served notices to come in and pay. Persons will come in and they will work out a payment plan with us to have that sorted out. There are times when, depending on the circumstances, they'll ask us for a moratorium, which is taken to our Land Divestment Committee for a decision, and they're given some time before they can actually start repaying the rental. For non-utilization, when we do our annual checks on the leases, the persons are invited in. There are times when, based on the state of their business, they're not able to fully utilize the acres that we've given them, and they will, in that discussion, voluntarily agree to surrender some of the lease so we can make it available to other persons and retract and basically reduce the area that they have under the lease. So those are that's how we handle some of those. And where they're using it contrary to the use, we will serve notice, and if they're not able to address that, we will go the process of getting them evicted.
Any other question? Oh, member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to the Minister of Labor, which ministry is administering the hurricane relief support. He said that persons who receive benefits from other ministries, like the Ministry of, your ministry, would not receive any other benefit from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. But for persons who would have been on your listing for a social housing unit, they would not yet receive the benefit, but they would be in line for a benefit under that program. How do you coordinate that with the Ministry of Labor that is administering the housing support?
All right, so thanks for your query, member. I want to advise members that the process that we use is very collaborative. In fact, we do vigorous cross-checking to prevent or just to mitigate persons receiving multiple benefits. I am not aware of the specific instance in which you speak, you know, about what the Minister of Local Government would have said. But what we do in the ministry is that when an applicant applies, for example, for one of our housing grants, one of the houses, what we do is that there is a database that is held, that is kept by the Ministry of Local Government. So, and also, I know PS Marsha is here as well, so we would collaborate with them to see to what extent this person
I did not refer
has
to local government, I refer to Ministry of
Labor.
Yeah.
That's PS. Right, so in terms of what we do is that the database that is there from the National Spatial Data Management Branch, we run the information to see what benefits this person would have received. It is not that we're saying that someone who receives a benefit cannot receive another benefit, as a general edict. What it does allow us to do is to make a determination as to what benefit, how much we will now give this person. So remember, in terms of someone who is to receive a house, if it is that they're going to receive a house, then generally speaking, I do not see them getting, what other benefit are you talking about?
Well, for
example,
the Ministry of Labor is dealing with the hurricane recovery roofs program. So there are persons qualified for minor damage, major damage, and total. So the person who would have received qualified for a total damage. So that person will be getting 500,000 towards rebuilding. But the MP would have recommended that person 2 years ago for a housing unit, and it was verified, and that person would have been qualified and now awaiting the ministry, your ministry, to get one of the units. But subsequent to the approval, the hurricane came, and the assessment was done now by Ministry of Labor, and he is now qualified under their program to get up the 500,000. But you have that person on your listing already to get a brand new house next year or next month. What kind of collaboration takes place between the ministries to ensure that, given the fact that this person is now, has already been qualified for one of the new units, then how would you mitigate against that person getting that 500,000 for a unit under the Ministry of Labor's program?
All right, so thanks for the further clarification. So the National Spatial Data Management Branch has a combined database with info from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, National Housing Trust, from the Tourism Enhancement Fund, and also from us in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development. So when someone applies, like the case that you have put forward, we would check our database to see to what extent this person has benefited from other things. It's really, I wouldn't necessarily say, I know there are instances where we'll say, for example, this person has benefited from the maximum that another ministry is offering and therefore cannot benefit further from what we are.
In both instances, that person would not yet receive the benefit from either of the ministries, but they are qualified.
And what I would say to that question, though
So
I would like you to
have the
provide me
record?
with the specifics, and that can be done after this meeting so we can have further follow-up on that, if you provide me with the specifics.
No, I'm just making a general comment. You know, I don't have any specific persons who fall within that category.
So this will be a discussion between the various ministries and the Member of Parliament to see which one of the benefits is ready, at a more point of readiness for that person to benefit from. And then that determination will be had. So as I said, member, I do not know of the specific instance that you are speaking about in terms of what Minister of Local Government would have said. And I would have to get those details for me to answer in a more specific way.
Right, but and just to correct you again, it's not local government, Ministry of Labor.
Labor.
Labor, right.
Yes,
right.
thanks.
All right, and in terms of the identification of lands for persons who will be resettled, for example, in Westmoreland, there was a lot of persons whose homes were destroyed, but they were squatters, so to speak. They were living on
Member, can you speak in the mic, please?
yes. Right. So when you identify lands for those persons for the program of resettlement, do you take into consideration their current occupation? Because it is some of these persons live in a particular area where their occupation is dependent on the area that they live. For example, a fishing community. If you don't put him back into another fishing community, then he won't survive. That kind of thing. How do you manage that process?
Okay, so these are matters that are under discussion, but generally what I will say, and as you mentioned, Westmoreland, we have identified lands to resettle some persons. Madam Walcott would have made a presentation earlier about general lands that are identified, but there's a specific case now where we have identified lands to relocate some persons in Westmoreland, but I am going to leave that for the minister to announce, and I suspect that he will do that shortly. I know PS from Labor is here, from local government. I don't know why I keep mixing up those two ministries, but PS Marsha is here, and she's aware of what I'm speaking in terms of the resettlement of a particular group of persons, in that area, that the parish that I've mentioned. But in terms of the logistics and in terms of the considerations that we will have to take into consideration, and you have mentioned, for example, the person's livelihood is fishing, and if it is that they are to be relocated, ideally it would have to be in another area of fishing, or else we'd have to go to a bigger debate to say, how is it that we can empower these people with additional skills, to enable them to now expand their horizons. So all these things, members, are things that we are actively considering and we are discussing. And in the months and weeks and months ahead, we will be engaging further the members of parliament as we discuss the whole resettlement of persons. But we do it generally in a way that is humane, and that will be a very consultative process, and one that we try to get the maximum benefits for both the person who is going to be resettled as well as the overall government and what the agenda of the government is. And as you mentioned too, at the directive of the Prime Minister, Minister Montague would have led a committee in terms of how is it that we build back and how do we build back better, build back forward, as the Prime Minister often says. And even in terms of, yes, persons were affected in a particular area. Some of them we are well aware, and I'm sure members are well aware. I wouldn't necessarily want to name the places. What we have done is that we have undertaken a very consultative process to see, for example, what will be no-build zones. So, the fact that these persons were living in a particular space does not necessarily mean that we are going to build back there. So all of these are now under discussion. we are very advanced in that discussion, and I suppose in very short order, certain announcements will be made.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. Is there something that you'd want to add? If not,
right. I did mention that it was a very collaborative process, and my team members here are saying that we would have collaborated with ODPEM, OPM, MLSS, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, and also, this is not an exhaustive list, but just the point to be made that it's a very collaborative process.
last question.
Chairman, I remember in the presentation by the team, it was mentioned that there's 1,000 acres of land that was identified. And I don't remember, just quickly remind me, the 1,000 acres of land have been identified to assist with persons who have been displaced from Hurricane Melissa. But there's some other agencies that you're working. I just want to know what's the status of that land. Where is it exactly right now? You have identified the lands, and just remind me what's next.
All right, so the lands identified, the 1,000 acres, are for Commission of Lands and Ministry of Housing. We've put forward all the specifics of the lands, and the collaboration with the other entities are ongoing to determine which lands will be required or which lands are suitable. So we will do some consultation with all our different stakeholders, NEPA, the Ministry of Agriculture, all the other entities, the parish councils in the areas, to ensure that we select the best property that will be utilized.
Thank you. Why I ask is, we're 2 months away from another hurricane season. So sometimes I find that when you collaborate with agencies, it takes some time. So I just wanted to know how far it was. But I guess that's all you can tell me today. But we're 2 months away from another hurricane season.
If there are no more questions, let me say how grateful we are this morning to have you here from the Ministry of Job Creation and Growth. Sorry? Is that the name? Economic Growth and Infrastructure. Thank you very much. So we are happy to have you here. You have given us information that I will have to take back to my neck of the woods. As per the suggestion, Mr. Cargill, I will be communicating with you a lot more, sir, Madam PS. Also, I think Ms. Walcott is now on the list of persons that because for some reason, I am 77% informal as it relates to a constituency. So understand me and forgive me if I have to keep calling you. But I will be reaching out to you even more so this time around. Thank you again for coming. You are excused. We will make contact with you at the next time for invite to this meeting, if we so need to. Thank you again. Members, any other business? If there is no other business, we will now move for date of the next meeting. At this time, we will round robin if there is a matter that needs to be discussed. And so we know meeting now stands adjourned, moved by Smith, seconded by Witter.